So I'm a colossal derp. I had this video ready to upload and everything, and I thought I already had, so I actually deleted the original recording of this, and then going to do the first of the battle videos for this set, and I look on my YouTube so I can edit the description stuff because it's exported from Twitch, and oops, it looks like I didn't upload this, so I guess we're speaking about this for the next almost hour again here. Hey guys, this is GamerCow, welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. This time we're talking about probably, or at least potentially, the greatest set of all time for me. This is probably my favorite set, if not actually the best one ever, but I think there's a very strong argument that Phantom Forces could be up there. We've talked about a lot of great sets before, you know, Stormfront comes to mind, Team Rocket Returns was really good, even Delta Species, right, had all the Holon stuff in it, that was awesome. We had just so many amazing sets in the past, even stuff like, you know, Team Rocket, as bad as it was for the game, certainly had a lot to talk about. But this, well, this like 124 card set over here, and a couple of promos I've either forgotten about or just came out here, there are like 4 distinct archetypes that we have coming out here, and we are going to see most of them represented within the 2 battle videos that we have for this. So it's just stellar in general. There's not much else to say with it. Let's just get right into it. We'll talk about the promos first because they're really not that relevant here, but I do like to try and show the Mega evolutions as we go. So we get a really cool looking shiny Metagross over here. It doesn't do anything special, unfortunately. Moving energy to the Metagross would be actively bad in the face of Yveltal, which is still really good. Squared attack does absolutely nothing of relevance for how much energy it costs, but I will say if there was the new mechanic in this set that helps Megas, if the Metagross had that access as well, it would actually not be completely terrible. It's got 220 HP, which is reasonable enough. You know, that's the sort of median range for the Megas and stuff here. And for 4 colorless energy, Gatling Slug does 130 damage, which is already a little on the pricey side, but still doable, especially within this set. And the bonus effect is that it does more damage for every metal energy that's attached to it, 10 more to be specific. So if you only have metal energy on this thing, it'll do 170 for 4, which is okay, right? It gets a one-shot on the weaker EXs. You do need to put a little bit more in to get a one-shot on the heavier stuff, but that's doable. And yeah, you might think, okay, 4 metal energy, how on earth are you getting that? We will get to that, but spoilers, there's a electric equivalent in the set for metal, so it would actually be fine. But because Mega Evolutions end your turn when you play them, this just takes too long. It's too slow, and that's unfortunate. I think Crocodile probably was part of the previous stuff here, because it is XY25, so it's probably in the previous set. If I mentioned it there, I apologize. Just because it's a Crocodile, it's never going to be playable, but at least it looks kind of cool, I guess. So yeah, but come on, 4 energy, 130, discard a card from your hand? Otherwise it does nothing? Are you kidding me? Like, seriously? Just miserable. This Trevor came out, I think, in a trainer kit around this sort of time, and, well, it's a supporter that basically is Master Ball, right? Search your deck for a Pokemon, put it into hand. It's never going to see play, even with the tools that we would have for it in this set, because it's just too slow, right? Searching for a single Pokemon on your supporter is not where you want to be. Ultra Ball is in format after all, and that is just a way to go. So, yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, to say the least. The only major reprints, I guess, in this set that are relevant to note is Enhanced Hammer gets a reprint in here, and because the reprints are always trainers, right? So it's like Enhanced Hammer gets a print, Sycamore, I guess, gets a reprint. It would be nice at the time for, you know, players and stuff that are just getting into the game. So did Roller Skates and Shauna, and I guess Tierno's in here as well, but whoop-de-freaking do. Nobody cares about any of that. We care about the fancy new stuff, and the fancy new stuff is absolutely amazing. AZ is the first one we're going to talk about here. This is basically old school scoop up, but slightly better. Put one of your Pokemon into your hand. You discard every other card attached to it. This is a supporter, so you would think it's too slow, but there are many beneficial synergies that you could do with this, even just within this set. Any coming into play power is amazing with this, but it also just picks up a damaged active and puts it back into hand, right? Yeah, the energy gets discarded, but if you can accelerate from the discard, that's not even a bad thing. So yeah, this card is absolutely insane. The only thing it doesn't do really is pick tools back up as well, right? They go to the discard. So if you overuse, I guess, muscle band and stuff, and you need to pick up your attackers all the time, maybe that's not going to work. But yeah, it's really good. The upgrade from Scoop Up is that it actually puts all stages of the Pokemon back as well. That's incredibly important for the gameplay this time around, so keep that in mind. Battle Compressor is one of the strongest cards of all time. I do not understand how they managed to think this was okay to print. If you've ever played Yu-Gi-Oh, you know that Foolish Burial is on the limited list, right? It puts one monster from your deck into the graveyard, and that is way too strong to put at 3, even though it's a -1. It's like so ridiculously powerful in that game, because graveyard synergies are everywhere. We're kind of in a similar boat here, but Battle Compressor is almost more like Painful Choice at times, because you search your deck for up to 3 cards and discard them. You'd have to discard at least 1, but so long as you do that, it's between 1 and 3 is kind of insane. And there are just a countless number of things that you can do with this, but skipping ahead to the end a little bit here, VS Seeker gets its final reprint in this set, and oh man, VS Seeker actually sees so much play this time around. This is why I was always surprised when it came out in Gen 3 and 4, and it just didn't see play. And I kind of get why, especially for Gen 4 I get why now, because item lock was just far too prevalent everywhere, right? Spiritomb was just way too good for that, and then Vileplume came out later and just ruined the day as well. So I kind of get it, but it still baffles me a little bit how, you know, decks just couldn't take advantage of it. Here, though, oh baby, here is just so much better. I guess we also have, like, Sycamore as a thing now, so we've got really powerful supporters to use, whereas the supporters in the old days, yeah, you needed to use them, but they certainly weren't as bat-breaking, I guess, to ping in, so I don't know, but it's more than just that. You can discard excess Pokemon, so your Flareon gets more powerful. You can discard excess energy, so you can accelerate from the discard. Ridiculous. That's just a couple of the things. You can mill out cards that you don't want to draw, because if you get an Enter 2, you don't want Ultra Ball in the deck, for example, because you can't play that anymore. So, just a few things you can do. You can pitch supporters, of course, so that VS Seeker can get it, so this effectively, if you draw both of these in the opening hand, lets you get whatever supporter card you want. And I have built tutor decks like that as well. We'll see that in the gameplay videos. Just ridiculous. I could talk about the uses of this for ages, but we've got so many other cards to talk about that I think we've just got to move on to probably the second, maybe third most broken stadium card in recent, like not even recent, but like to this point in history. Dimension Valley is the psychic support for this set. This set supports psychic and metal as the main two things here, and the psychic support means that your psychic Pokemon's attacks cost 1 colorless less to do. Oh boy, there's so many abusable things to this. I am stunned this card is not banned and expanded, although to be fair, expanded is a dead format anyway, especially nowadays, because TCG Live doesn't even support expanded. Sun and Moon on, that's not an expanded format. It should be, but a minimum, but it's not. Whatever. Details. Going on tangents, etc. That's what you come for, right? Anyway, yeah, no, there's so much you can do with this, because even just thinking about it, Mew EX is in format right now, and Mew EX can copy any attack in play, so long as you can pay for it. But Mew EX is the Psychic type, so you take it for 1 energy less. That's just the first example. There's so many things. We're going to be referencing Dimension Valley basically every time Psychic Pokemon come up until this card rotates. It's ridiculous. The other thing this set introduces, there's only 2 Megas in this set, but they introduced a mechanic they should have had from the very beginning, and that is Spirit Links. So, in the video games, if you are unaware of how Mega Pokemon work, you have the hold item for the Mega Stone, and that lets you Mega Evolve the Pokemon. You can't use another hold item unless you're Rayquaza, because you cheat. You can't use another hold item on that Pokemon, but obviously you don't have a turn end or anything stupid like that when you Mega Evolve. But they kind of didn't translate that into the TCG proper until this set. As you can read on the screen here, your turn does not end if the Pokemon this card is attached to becomes Mega Gengar EX. You actually can attach these to any Pokemon, so if you play enough of them, like you could attach it to a Garbodor just so you can activate its ability. But yeah, it lets you play the Megas without having to worry about ending the turn. And that's why they become playable. Mega Gengar maybe not so much, but we'll get into that as we go. Manectric on the other hand, which has this nice looking Spirit Link over here. Manectric is an amazing card, and yeah, we'll start to see Megas experimented with a lot here. Hand Scope unfortunately doesn't do enough. The opponent reveals their hand, that's cool and all I suppose, but I guess you could maybe combine it with some of the cards in this set to say, you know, disrupt them properly and whatnot, or know when to end or when to Juniper, but it just doesn't do enough to be that sort of beneficial. But I guess some dumb control deck could probably do a thing with it, but whatever. Let's talk about the Team Flare tools, because there's only 2 of them in existence, and they only come from this set, and they are kind of hard to read, but it's fine. There is Headringer and Jamming Nets. These do not attach to your Pokemon, you attach them to the opponent's EXs. And they do negative effects because they are, you know, like Headringer, Jamming Net, you would expect. They're kind of negative stuff. If Headringer is on a Pokemon, it will make that Pokemon's attack cost 1 colorless more. And if Jamming Net is on the Pokemon, then it will do 20 less damage to any of the opponent's Pokemon that it hits. If the card is removed from play for any reason, it goes into the discard pile. So you cannot say recover it if the opponent plays Tool Retriever on it. Or if they AZ, if they AZ, it's going to the discard anyway. If they Super Scoop Up and it, you know, the Pokemon goes back to hand and it will not recover Jamming Net for you. These are very powerful. Headringer is by far the stronger one. I think the only reason you don't see these see more widespread play is just because they are hard to fit into the deck. Because otherwise they are absolutely ludicrous, and yeah, there are some cards which will greatly benefit from having these around. So yeah, the tool war is starting to come in as well at this point. It's not just stadiums, tools are there too. Lysander's Trump card is probably the most infamous card out of the set, because it's the one that got banned in Standard. Each player shuffles all cards in their discard pile into their deck except for Lysander's Trump card. That's right, we have Fiber Jar as well as fucking Foolish Burial in here as well. Yeah, it's ridiculous just how stupid some of the stuff is in here. Lysander's Trump card is a good card for the format until we get to Turbo, and at that point it just becomes completely stupid, because recovering resources like items and special energy and whatnot that easily are not things that decks should really be able to do in the Pokemon TCG. That's just too powerful. But the shuffling of Pokemon back, specifically from the opponent's side, is like, the reason this was printed is because of one of the archetypes in this set, Night March, and that was like a balancing act for it, because Night March is absurdly powerful and a single prize deck, but it requires all of its guys in the discard, and if you can shove them back into the deck, then that's a good thing for, you know, the health of the game. Unfortunately, it was printed at the same time as VS Seeker, so yeah, it's not the smartest of design choices here, I don't think. Robo Substitute, if you remember Clefairy Doll, is basically that, but with 30 HP instead. So play it as a 30 HP basic Pokemon, at any time between turns you could discard it, or like any time during your turn I should say, and it can't retreat, so you have to discard it if it's inactive and you want to get out. But if the card gets KO'd, the opponent doesn't take a prize for it. The KO part is going to be relevant for teammates in the next set, but we're not there yet, so yeah, very, very strong card. Sai plays this with Donphan in the second battle video, and uses it to great effect, so good card. Steel Shelter is the metal stadium for this set, and honestly it's pretty underwhelming. Each metal Pokemon in play can't be affected by special conditions, and you remove special conditions on those Pokemon. So it's like Virizion, but on a stadium. It's a fine. We do still have Hypnotoxic Laser after all, and this is a way you can remove it without falling foul of Seismitoad, and without having to play a supporter like Pokemon Santa Lady. So, like, it's okay, but it doesn't really do a lot. And there are so many better stadiums for stuff in general that it's just a shame that this ends up being in, but, you know, such is the way. Target Whistle is Azur's least favorite card ever, and it is a reprint of the Poke Flute from the base set. Put a basic Pokemon from your opponent's discard pile onto his or her bench. It is also in standard format right now with Echoing Horn, and it does see competitive play nowadays too. You probably won't see too much of this because it's difficult to play, you know, because like Target Whistle plus Lysander, great combo, but you need to have both bits at the same time. So it's a little bit tricky to use, but it is exceptionally powerful, and it will end games if you let it. So yeah, very cool card if you can fit it in. Probably just a one-off tag. Trick Coin is Victini on a tool card. Once during your turn, if you flip any coins for an attack, you can ignore those and reflip all of them. You can only do that once, and you can't stack this with Victini, so don't get any ideas. But it is a very silly card nonetheless, and I don't think it ever sees any play, but it is amusing at the very least, and if your attack relies on coin flips, maybe this is something you've got to do. Then we mentioned VS Seeker, card is absolutely insane, and we're going to see it as a 3 or 4 of in basically every single deck going forward. It is just that good. I think there were some people that didn't play as many when it started out, or maybe certain decks can't play that many of it, but you know, basically every deck is going to play all copies possible as we go. It just means you've got effectively 5 copies of every supporter in your deck, which is absolutely stupid. And then finally, on the supporter front is Xerosic. This is a very nasty supporter card if you are up against Special Energy, which, like, let's face it, Seismitoad is in format, so that's pretty good, right? Choose a Pokemon tool or Special Energy attached to any one Pokemon in play and discard it. So this is the one way that we would have to discard Headringers and stuff directly off of our Pokemon that the opponent has placed on them. Because we do not have Tool Scrapper anymore, we have Starling Megaphone, which is Harpy's Feather Duster, not Heavy Storm. So, yeah. We have this as an option if you really need to, but more than likely, it's going to discard a Special Energy from the opponent's Pokemon. And that's devastating, to be honest. Very, very powerful effect here. Sometimes you might need to discard the tool off of them. Do remember, if you're under Seismitoad lock, you can't use Startling Megaphone, so there will be times where that could come in handy. Finally, for the energy, we don't get the metal one in this set, that comes next set for some reason, but we do have Mystery Energy, which is also really strong. The drawback, just like Strong Energy, you can't attach this to a non-psychic Pokemon, but the retreat cost of the Pokemon it's attached to is 2 less. Keep in mind, Trevenant is a 3 energy retreat cost card, not 2, so it's not going to benefit Trev in... No, it is going to benefit it, but it's not going to make it 0 retreat unless you put 2 of them on. But it does let you retreat significantly easier, which is good. And this is just fantastic for basically every Psychic deck out there, because retreating easier is always a strong effect. On to the Pokemon, and just like normal, we are going to talk about it as an actual set as we go here, because we have Megas and stuff, and the Megas don't get full arts and fancy stuff there, so rather than jumping around, let's just go in by type. I have seen that apparently the Yanmega in this set is actually good. I didn't rate this whatsoever, but there was a Manectric Yanmega deck that did pretty well in, I think it was Worlds format, because the Yanmega is actually alright against Seismitoad, and I think that's the main reason for it. For 3 energy of any type, Surprise Strike does 50 damage, which is not very good. But if it was on the bench and became active this turn, it does 50 more damage. This is combined with a Manectric in this set, which basically is a 0 retreat body, more or less for that. And Manectric can accelerate energy to this, and then it's like, you just retreat to this thing, get the damage in. It's got 0 retreat itself, so if it survives, then you get to, go out again. And it does resist biting, which Manectric of course is weak to, so that's pretty useful. Not terrible, to be honest, I just didn't think it was good enough, but apparently it is. 110 HP is also not terrible for a stage 1 as well. Same HP as Yanmega Prime, I realize, which is like 2 generations ago, but that was a Prime. Most of the time Yanni would have like 100 at most before, so whatever. Talonflame would be cool if, you know, if it was just in a different format, because like Jet Shoot, we've seen this sort of attack before. It's okay, I suppose, but it's probably like the worst of the Talonflame so far though, so whatever. Pyroar is pretty cool because we have the other Pyroar that we could use right now as well. Royal, it's not Royal Flare, that's the promo one. Flare Command lets you discard a fire energy from the Pyroar and force the opponent in. It's like Gust of Wind if you can discard a fire on this thing. Pretty solid, to be honest. We have Blacksmith in format, so we could get like 2 charges of this, basically. That, you know, Blacksmith turns into double Lysander over the course of 2 turns. Pretty good. Its attack is useless, so if you're playing Pyroar anyway, this is not terrible. However, because of Mega Evolution stuff being reasonable here, I think Pyroar is like even worse now than it was before. So we're probably not going to see it, but there were experimentations and there were some successful decks with it around. So keep that in mind. None of the water stuff in this set's any good, unfortunately, but that's okay. Let's talk about my favorite, or my favorite archetype, I guess, in this set is Manectric. There's also this down here too, which is part of the archetype you're going to see, but still, we'll get to that later on. Manectric EX is a 170 HP dude with 1 retreat, so pretty solid. It does resist metal, which is quite good for this particular set, and it's got 2 very good attacks. For 1 colorless energy, Overrun does 20, and then 20 to one of the opponent's bench. It's a little bit worse than Landorus, but it also doesn't cost a colored energy, so you can use it with basically everything at the start of the game if you're mixing energy types. Assault Laser for 1 lightning and 1 colorless does 60, which is decent enough, but if the opponent's active has a tool card attached, it does 60 more. You can force that if you put Headringer on them, so you can make them have the tool. 120 is really good. Keep in mind every Mega Evolution as well is probably going to use the Spirit Link from here on out, so they're basically always going to have tools on them, and yeah, it just hits really good numbers for it. Assault Laser can get to 140 with a Muscle Band, or if you don't go down that sort of route, you can Mega Evolve with the Spirit Link that we have here. And Mega Manectric is insane. 210 HP is on the frail side, it's the lowest HP we've seen on a Mega so far, but it makes up for it because the attack is really strong, and it gets 0 retreat too, which is just fantastic. Turbo Bolt for 1 lightning and 1 colorless does 110, so it's certainly not a one-shot Mega like a lot of these have been, but you get to attach 2 basic energy when you discard parts of one of your bench. You can, if you just go like basically pure Manectric, you can run Max Potion as a thing here, right? You Max Potion 1 Manectric after you accelerate to the second one, and yeah, you just tank hits, because 210 is still hard to KO in 1 hit. Outside of fighting types exactly, 210 doesn't get hit very often. So yeah, it's hard to one-shot, and it might not do one-shot numbers itself, but it has that inevitability going for it. And it doesn't say lightning energy. You can accelerate any type of energy with this, so you can play it with stuff like Yveltal if you want to accelerate dark energies as well. Just have a big old loop going on, and Yveltal resists fighting too, so you've got that nice synergy for it there. It doesn't use any abilities, so you can play it with Garbodor and stuff as well if you really want to. There's so much that you can do with this thing, and yeah, there's over a dozen archetypes you could build with this, even just now. It is absolutely insane how cool this card is. Let's talk about the Night Marchers, because there are 3 of them that all basically do the same thing with varying costs and whatnot here. There's a Joltik with only 30 HP, but it really doesn't matter too much. It's got the most efficient attack out of everyone because it only uses a DCE. You've got Pumpkaboo, which does a little bit more, like 60 HP, but it takes 3 energy for its attack. But we do have Dimension Valley, so you make that a DCE, it's just an extra combo piece. And then you've got Lampent, which never sees play in like actual on the field play, because you can't power this up, let's be real. 1 Psychic, double colorless for the same thing, just why? Yeah, this, you don't even play Litwick because you just discard this instead. The reason this is good though is because Night March stacks very, very highly. Like, it's just it buffs itself up so much. 20 damage for every Night March attack. You know, like every Pokemon with Night March as an attack in your discard. So with the 3 of them here, and this, I think this is relatively consistent throughout a lot of the iterations of this. Like the Unity Wing thing that is in Paldea Evolved is the same as like 3 Pokemon that can do the thing. Yeah, if you get all but 1 in the discard, so you can attack with that 1, you are doing 220 damage, which is enough to one-shot basically everything. Yeah, that's just how powerful we can get to here. Keep in mind that Mew EX can copy Joltik, and it will only cost 1 colorless energy if you've got Dimension Valley in play, so you do, even if it is a 2-prizer, you do have an extra attacker there. That means you don't always have to have, like, you can max out on Night Marches at that point and be a bit safer about it. We do have access to Battle Compressor, obviously, in this set, that gets all the Lampent in the discard, you know, fairly easily. So that's obviously very powerful. And yeah, we can just kind of turbo through a ton of stuff here. It's only going to get stronger as the sets get released here. And just wait until Shaman and to see just how powerful this archetype is. Hitting Lightning and Psychic is also relatively good weakness-wise at the moment, because we still have Lucario as reasonable for Psychic weakness. Mewtwo EX is still played pretty regularly, so hitting Psychic is good for that, especially with Dimension Valley here as well. Mewtwo can actually start getting a bit stronger, and the Lightning weakness is really good for Yveltal, so you've got a couple of good weaknesses to hit here as well. It's just, yeah, it starts off decent and then it only gets better from there. Moving back to the main set here, we do have the Crobat line, and basically all of this is worth talking about. The Zubat itself is nothing too special off the top, but I mean, all of these attack for 1 colorless energy, so if you've got Dimension Valley in play, they don't cost any energy to attack, which is good. We don't tend to see that too often. Zubat just snipes 10 to one of the opponent's Pokemon, which, fair enough. I mean, set up a damage counter number or something, it could be okay. Golbat does tend to all of the opponent's Pokemon, which is pretty reasonable. Also has 0 retreat at this point, where the Zubat does have a retreat cost, but this does not. And then Crobat does 30 damage to one of the opponent's Pokemon. So, okay, these don't seem very good, right? Why are we even talking about stuff? Well, it's because of the bites. Sneaky Bite, when you evolve into Golbat, puts 2 damage counters on one of the opponent's Pokemon, and then Surprise Bite from Crobat puts 3 damage counters on one of the opponent's Pokemon when you evolve into it. So, these are math fixes for a lot of things, right? I mentioned before the Manectric can do quite a reasonable bit of damage by itself, but then you stick a couple of Golbats down, or a Golbat and a Crobat, and suddenly this is starting to hit one-shot numbers, which is really, really good. Just manipulate the damage where you need it as well. Obviously, the other thing you can do with this, you can attack, and Skill Dive is pretty good at hitting Psychic weak stuff like the Mewtwo. Might put a Muscle Band on this thing, you do 100 damage, that's pretty good. And it also doesn't get hit by fighting, because it resists fighting, so it doesn't get hit that way for the Manectric. And yeah, it's a 1-prizer. It's kind of hard to KO in 1 hit sometimes. 130 HP is not the biggest, but it's certainly not unusable. And you just AZ this. That's pretty much it. We have AZ, we have Scoop Up Cyclone if you want to use that A-Spec. Super Scoop Up is still possible if you flip heads with it. And you pick this up again. And then you evolve other bats that you have in play. And you just keep stacking the damage up. So many decks can use this. It's another one of those cards that you can build a million decks around, but some examples, you can use it with the Wobbuffet we're going to talk about in a bit. You can use it with Landorus is pretty good, Seismitoad is pretty good, Raichu, when Skyfield comes out, actually gets a really good buff with this thing as well. So yeah, tons and tons of decks you can play this in, and it's only going to get better as we go. Absolutely adore this. It's probably one of my favorite styles of play of all time. We don't see it very often in this this form, but I absolutely adore this guy. And yeah, bats is a thing that we are going to see a decent bit of, I think. Let's talk about the Gengar. So Gengar does have a 2 energy retreat cost, but Mystery Energy can fuel that. It's not too bad. 170 HP is a little on the frail side, but there's some good stuff you can still do with this, because Night Attack, not too bad. 3 damage counters on one of the opponent's Pokemon for a colorless energy, so if you have Dimension Valley in play, that costs 0. That competes with Chandelier EX that we saw before, which is like 4 damage counters wherever you want, I think, but it's for a Psychic Energy, so sometimes you're not going to get that to pull off. And Dark Corridor is also reasonable. Psychic Double Colorless is a very expensive attack for only doing 60 damage, but it does poison the opponent's active and switches the Gengar out, so it at least preserves it, forces the opponent to Lysander it, which is, you know, not always going to happen. And 60 poison, not a ton, but again, if you played this maybe with the bats and stuff, you could get some good numbers coming out of that. And poison can be buffed with Verbank if you don't want to play Dimension Valley. Right, Psychic Double Colorless is not unplayable for its cost, and yeah, that can happen. But you can also Mega Evolve. 220 HP on this one, so ironically bulkier than the Manectric, kind of funny. And its attack is Phantom Gate, which is a super form of foul play that we saw on Zoroark before. Choose one of the opponent's attacks and use it as this attack. This is any attack the opponent has in play, so even if it's on the bench, you can still use that Mega Charizard and do 300 damage with it. Be very funny. Yeah, it's a little expensive. I don't think the Mega Gengar really saw any sort of play. I remember regular Gengar seeing play as an alternative to Donphan, playing Mega Gengar with Trevenant, because it is all Psychic type after all. It's not too bad. The Dark weakness is a little rough for that though. Yveltal is a very strong matchup. Like, it has a really good time against Gengar, so that could get a little bit rough. But it's not the worst I've ever seen. Wobbuffet is very nasty, actually. 110 HP basic, and it has the Bide Barricade ability. As long as it is active, each Pokemon in play, in hand, and in discard have no abilities, except for Psychic Pokemon. So that works with the bats, because bats are Psychic, obviously, in this set. I mean, their Poison type is treated as Psychic right now, so that's good. And yeah, it doesn't shut off Garbodor, I suppose, so Garbodor can turn this off, which is very amusing. But yeah, it turns off a lot of different abilities the opponent is going to be using. Some stuff you could actually attack with this with Pyroar, right? Because Pyroar, its ability is what makes it unaffected by like damage from basics, so you can attack with this. It'd be great. It's also a 2 energy retreat, so Mystery Energy is very good with this thing, because you can just retreat for free at that point. And if you play Donphan, you can switch to the Wobbuffet. I don't think you're going to play Mystery Energy with Donphan, but it's just, that's the sort of idea, right? Gengar, I guess you could retreat into the Wob. But it's actually an okay attacker with the bats itself. One Psychic and a Colorless to do 10, plus 10 for every damage counter on the opponent's active Pokemon. Long time people who have seen anything of this might remember the Dark Crobat Jinx deck that I played, or, you know, that's one of the variants, right? Dark Crobat Jinx that I played in the Legendary Collection at the very end of, like, Gen 2 stuff. And this does basically the same thing, but slightly better, right? Meditate was 2 Psychic and a Colorless to attack, and this is basically 1 Psychic if you've got Dimension Valley in play. So it's a very low to the ground deck. If you play enough bats down, you're going to get a lot of damage output from it, and it stops a lot of different abilities that the opponent could use. So exceptionally good card, and we will definitely be seeing more of this as we go. There's some future disruption stuff that we can have for it as well that just make it great. So it's a good thing to sit behind, that's all I'm going to say. Fainting Spell Jump Scare over here, we have Chandelure with the Gengar Stormfront's ability, where if it gets KO'd by damage from an attack, you flip a coin. If heads, you KO the attacking Pokemon as well. The reason that Gengar was so ridiculous and so hated by us, though, is because its attacks were exceptionally strong, and Chandelure not only has 1 less attack, but also doesn't have a good attack. 1 Psychic Double Colorless puts 6 damage counters on the opponent's Pokemon in any way that you like. That's not even good for a Stage 2, right? Yeah, we've got Dimension Valley cut the cost down a bit, but it's just nowhere near good enough. So, yeah, this card will not see play. Gourgeist is interesting, not good, but interesting. If it has any Grass Energy attached to it, it has 200 HP. on a one prizer. It gets to Wailord size. That's great. I love this one because it references the different size that Gourgeist can have, right? You know, because Gourgeist's stats actually change for the 4 different sizes that it has in the video games, and this is a great reference to that. The supersized Gourgeist over here having more bulk than the other ones. Its attack is unfortunately not strong though. 1 psychic double colorless to do 10 for every card in your hand, which, yeah, N is in the format still, right? So even if you do stack a really large hand size, which is hard enough to do anyway, I think Gourgeist Slurpuff would probably be the only way of doing that, and that's, whatever. We'll get to the Slurpuff later on. None of the fighting type stuff is any good. The dart types have got a funny reference with the Spiritomb because it has B cancel, so press B to prevent evolution, and that's what this does. Pretty funny. But it also has Malamar, which is a fairly good staple in Fairy Box decks. It's 170 HP, and it has an interesting ability and a pretty okay attack. Its ability, if you attach an energy from the hand to this Pokemon, you make the opponent fall asleep. Which, yeah, Fairy Box is great for this because they transfer the fairy energy that you attach to this away and use it for other purposes. So, yeah, you can reliably proc this, which is pretty good. Maximar is basically Darmaxitin, or Chillmax. I guess it's Chillmax, really, from Vidalux in the Plasma set. For 1 dark and a colorless, you flip a coin for every energy that's on this Pokemon, 60 damage per heads. We do still have Victinian format, so if you really wanted to and go for the triple heads, do 180, it's possible. You'd need an average of like 5 to 7 energy to do that, which is a bit awkward. Considering, you know, 170 HP dude here is a little bit frail for that, but it's mostly for hyper hypnosis and like the occasional cheese factor, right? This card's alright. It has seen competitive play and it has seen success, so decent enough, can't really argue with it. Let's talk about the metal stuff because it's really good in this set. Bronzong is very cool. I wish we still had Heavy and Level Ball in format. We'll eventually get Heavy Ball, but not Level Ball, I'm afraid. 90 HP, so it would have been Level Ball searchable. Free Energy Retreat, so it will be Heavy Ball searchable eventually, if we want to play Bronzong at that point. And it has the Metal Links ability. So, yeah, I mentioned it was basically just electric, and that's just what it is. Once per turn, attach a Metal Energy from your discard to one of your bench Pokemon. Just like Electric, it no longer has to be on Metal only, which is really solid. And yeah, it just is generic Stage 1 acceleration. We do have Evo Soda in format, so you can get this out a little bit easier than like a Stage 2 would be. And yeah, it's really cool. And it works perfectly with Dialga over here. 180 HP Metal type, pretty tanky for the upper end of the EXs. And it has 2 pretty solid attacks. For 1 metal and a double colorless, you do 60, and if the opponent is an EX, they can't attack next turn, so you force them to switch out, which is okay. For 2 metal and 2 colorless, full metal impact. Not Alchemist, but close enough. Does 150 damage, and you discard 2 metal from this Pokemon. Specifically metal, so if you play DCE, you do have to discard the metal energy. With a Muscle Band that hits 170, which is enough to KO a lot of the EXs, which is pretty solid, and it's got a 2 energy retreat, so you can pay that retreat and get out without too much difficulty. Bronzong helps a ton with this, of course, and if you set up a couple of Bronzong, you can very nicely just keep moving in and out and do a ton of damage with this thing. 150 is not to be sniffed at. That is gonna one-shot any single prizer, basically, and except like the bulkiest of stuff, but it's good. I like it. Keytran, I like this. Pepper doesn't, but I think he's wrong because this has some good one-shot potential as well. 130 HP, free energy retreat. All the metal stuff is super big, so you know. Wish we had Heavy Ball in this format. Oh, that's all I'm gonna say. 2 good attacks though. Steel Drop for 1 metal double colorless does 40, and if there's a Stadium card in play, it does 40 more. Doesn't have to be your Stadium, so if you're playing against, say, like a Fairy deck and they put Fairy Garden down, that's suddenly more damage to you. If you're playing a Fairy deck, you're probably already winning, but, you know, whatever, doesn't matter. Steam Blast for 2 metal and the double colorless does 130, and you discard 1 energy on this Pokemon. So, I actually think I may like this a little bit more than Dialga in general, because it's a single prizer, but it does do 20 less damage, so you've got to keep that in mind. But I think it's good. Like, you can metal links to this without too much issue. It takes care of the safeguarders, which otherwise Dialga's going to have a problem with. And it's just nice, right? 130 KOs most single prize stuff. It's good stuff. I like it. Aegislash is very irritating for certain decks to deal with. It's a 170 HP metal EX here, 3 energy retreat, so once again, kind of wish we had the thing. I'm going to stop saying that now, I guess. It's got an okay attack. Slash Blast is basically Secret Sword, but 10 damage less. 40 for 3 energy, but 20 more for every metal that's attached to this Pokemon. It does just about get evolving basics if you put a DC on the thing, so I guess there's that going for it. But yeah, it's unfortunate that it scales just very slightly worse, but it's kind of balanced because Mighty Shield is insane. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from each of your opponent's Pokemon that has special energy attached to it. Yeah, that double colors that you rely on so much, or that strong energy on the fighting decks, now you just don't damage this thing. And yeah, this wall is broken in certain matchups. I played Night March against it. It was absolutely terrible because that deck only really plays DCE. So yeah, very, very nasty card. On to the one fairy type that's decent in here. Florges is very frail at 160 HP, which is a bit of a shame. But it's got 2 good attacks here. Lead if you're desperate, I suppose. If you go second, you might end up using this. Search your deck for a supporter card, put it into hand. If you've bricked at the start of the game, this can unbrick you, that's fair enough. And then Bright Garden for a fairy and a colorless does 20 for every grass and fairy Pokemon that you have in play. So naturally you're going to play this with like Aromatisse and Xerneas and stuff like that. But yeah, 120 for 2 is efficient. It's good 2-shot numbers. Little on the frail side, like I said, so 160 is maybe not quite where you need to be. But yeah, when we get Skyfield, it would actually be a potential deck to consider because you could then do 180, which is pretty good. So yeah, I like it. I said it's the one good fairy in this set because I just don't want to acknowledge this thing's existence because it only really helps Seismitoad, but whatever, it got played, so we'll talk about it anyway. Slowpuff is a 90 HP basic, it's not a basic, it's a stage 1, with a useless attack and a tasting ability. Once during your turn, you may draw a card. If this Pokemon is active, draw 1 more card. So yeah, draw 2 if it's active, you can put it up after a KO happens and draw 2 every time. But yeah, it just enables the Seismitoad as the main thing it gets played with, but I have seen it with like Flareon for some reason. I don't quite get the synergy with that, but it was a deck that saw play, so apparently, so there you go. Dragon types. There are 2, I guess, to look at. They're both stage 2. Hydreigon is definitely the better one, but I think we just couldn't make the deck work. Pepper tried, but it's tough to build. It's tough to build any stage 2 right now, let's be real. Dark Impulse lets you, once per turn, attach a Dark Energy from the discard pile to your active Pokemon. So yeah, it's like Dark Patch, but slightly better. And that's respectable, to be honest. Yveltal decks would really love this if they could get their hands on it. But it also means you could play Max Potion if you've got like 2 of these in play, and then recover the energy you just discarded, which is pretty great. Its attack is fine for dealing with safeguarders and whatnot, just like the previous Hydreigon that is technically still in format. 1 Psychic, 1 Dark, double colorless, 130 damage, discard 1 energy. Yeah, just a bit more expensive in terms of the colors than what Heatran does, I suppose. Yeah, it's good. It's just how do we get it going is the thing. It's a bit unfortunate that way. Goodra is funny, but not necessarily good because stage 2. Each player can't attach tool cards from his or her hand to any of his or her Pokemon. Its attack is too expensive, so we're not going to bother with any of the other stats here, really. Yeah, this prevents you from putting down Spirit Links, I suppose, so rip any Mega Deck. They have to use their turn to evolve. Oh no. The one thing it doesn't do is stop you from putting Head Ring on the opponent's EXs, so I think that's very funny. But beyond that, yeah, it's a cool-ish, like a decent Floodgate sort of effect, but just not good enough for what we need here. you don't play support stage 2, floodgate stage 2s like this very often, unless it's Vileplume specifically, because, you know, item lock, absolutely insane. Tools are only one subset of items right now, and that's just not enough to deal with. And that is it for the set, really. There's slight artwork appreciation because the Regigigas is holding the root sign from Gen 6, but yeah, that's pretty much it. None of the rest of the color stuff is any good in this set, so yeah, what a wild set this is, though. Like saying, 4 very distinct and very good archetype stuff to go with here. You've got Night March, you've got Minetric stuff, you've got Bat stuff, you've got Metal stuff, right? Like, there's so much. And of course, there's support for other archetypes as well, but it's even just thinking of what's in this set, like 4 very distinct, very powerful things that can sometimes mix and match a bit, which is really cool. And the trainer cards. Oh, good lord, the trainer cards are so strong in this set. So, yeah, very, very impactful set. We spent 2 rounds in this one. We've got a lot of decks that we wanted to show, and honestly, we still didn't get to show all of them in battles, but yeah, we do talk about a lot of decks in this set, so look forward to that. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you found this interesting, and next time, yeah, battles for this, but beyond that, we get Primal in the next one of these. So yeah, till then, take care.